I'm so glad to be a part of your day, a part of your week. I hope that this word that came to my heart through reading is going to be able to impact and bless you just as much as it blessed and impacted me. Today we're going to be looking at Matthew 9. We're going to look at the second verse of this chapter, and it speaks volumes into how we should carry out our call as a Christ follower. Now, during this time, Jesus was doing his earthly ministry. He was starting to get fame, and people were starting to recognize that he had healing power and taught these wonderful things with amazing authority and seemed different from the normal religious leaders. And so people were coming up to him all the time and wanting to get healed because they knew he could. And this particular passage is no different. While he's preaching, while he's teaching, while he's healing inside of this little building, 4 people bring a paralytic man laying on a bed, and they cut out the top of the roof, and they lay down this paralytic man in front of Jesus. And of course, they're expecting to have him healed. They're expecting to see the paralytic man walk and jump and sing because he's done all that kind of stuff before. Now, the people all around him were expecting this. I'm sure the paralytic man was expecting this. I'm sure his friends that brought him there were expecting this. And if we don't read any further than verse 1 of this chapter, we too probably would expect that of Jesus. However, Jesus does something pretty surprising and pretty confusing for everyone around. Take a look at verse 2 with me, and we'll see what he did. It reads, "And behold, some people brought to him a paralytic laying on a bed. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, 'Take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven.'" Now you can just kind of breeze through that and keep on reading and see his argument with the Pharisees and the little dispute they had. But this is an interesting response from Jesus, isn't it? He sees a man that is clearly showing that he needs to be able to walk again. It's pretty evident that that's his ailment, and he wants that to be healed. Everyone's expecting that to be healed. And yet the first thing Jesus does is forgive him of his sins. So why does he do that? Well, I think Jesus knows that there is a priority of what needs to be given to a broken people. See, Jesus could have just healed this man and he'd been able to walk again. And at the very best scenario that could have come from this, he could have lived the rest of his life being able to walk and jump and climb. But in the end, he would have died. And then he would have eventually been resurrected again, only to be cast into the lake of fire and be dead forever, with no chance of being in the kingdom where everything is perfect. At the very worst, he could have healed this man. He could have walked and jumped and climbed for one day. And then the very next day, he could have maybe accidentally fallen off a ladder and maybe even paralyzed himself again, be right back in the same state, but unforgiven, and then ultimately with the same outcome. Now, that's not the best thing compared to Jesus forgiving this man of his sins, and at the very, very worst situation in that way, being able to live the rest of his life on earth as a paralytic, which would have been troublesome and hard, but then he would have had rest from it and death, and then been resurrected to a perfect kingdom where he lived with God and Jesus and had a completely restored body that was perfect and lived forever. And at the very best, he could have been healed both spiritually and physically. Now, of course, Jesus does that a little bit later on in the story. But I just wanted to stop and look at verse 2, because we are called by Jesus to spread the kingdom. We're called by Jesus to spread the gospel and to be the church. And although we should definitely do our best to help our community and our people and our friends and family with daily needs and food and water and clothing and all kinds of wonderful things that the church has done throughout history, that's not the number one most important thing that we need to give to these people. People are lost and broken, and if they don't hear Christ, their fate is far worse than being hungry for a day. That's the reality. And so as a Christ follower, let's take heart with what Jesus did here. Let's remember what is the absolute most important thing that people need. Their spiritual sustenance, a spiritual revival, a transformation and salvation from their sin into God's kingdom. That's far more important. Now, we don't neglect the other, but we make sure we take care of spreading the gospel first and foremost. So as you live your life today, and the rest of the week and the rest of your month, and so on and so forth. Just remember to have the right priority. Make sure that you want to tell people what's best for them and ultimately for you too. Thank you for joining me today.